Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, a fascinating conversation with a student leader from UNR. Nathan Noble joins us for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
Retail's impact on Nevada's economy? Enormous. 8,600 businesses, large and small, employing 145,000 workers. And last fiscal year, retail paid tax on nearly $60 billion in sales. We're the Retail Association of Nevada. We support retail, we help it grow, and we mean business.
RANNV.org.
Nevada Newsmakers Studio is located at the headquarters of the Nevada Trucking Association. Motion and purpose are a truck's greatest virtue.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad on No Holds Barred Political Forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're delighted to welcome to the program Nathan Noble. He is a student leader at UNR. He's a senator. Pleasure to have you on the program, sir.
Morning, Sam. Pleasure to be here.
So you worked for Joe Biden to get him elected?
Well, I didn't work for Joe Biden personally. I met him once when I was about
for the
15.
campaign.
No, I did what I could to make sure that he won in 2020.
Okay. I guess that was the point I was trying to make. So what do you think of the performance so far?
You know, I will admit that for me, that particular race was less about Joe Biden and more about defeating Donald Trump, because at that point, the response to the pandemic, the response to the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and of course the response to the Black Lives Matter protests had been so poorly handled by President Trump that for me at that moment, I think for a lot of people on the campaign and off, it was really important to get Trump out of office so that he didn't do any more damage.
Were you more comfortable with Joe Biden as a candidate than you were with Bernie Sanders?
No, I was originally a Bernie Sanders supporter.
So what changed?
What changed is that Bernie Sanders lost the primary. And at the end of the day, in life, we have to make grown-up choices. And so when you're posed with Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, I know who I'm supporting.
Right, well, to say the least. Of the Bernie Sanders proposals, which ones did you like the most?
You know, I feel that a lot of people in my generation really resonated with his message, specifically because of the proposals like Medicare for All, because a lot of us have trouble accessing health care. Proposals like a Wall Street exchange tax, because many of us grew up in the recession after there was a massive bailout to Wall Street and other corporations like it. And so I think that hearing that message really hit home with what the issues of our times are.
Do you think that there's a problem with essentially trying to give away so much stuff for free? Free college, Medicare for all, where does the money come from?
Well, you know, there is no such thing as a free lunch, of course. But if you look at the fiscal policy behind a lot of his proposals, the math just works out. And it's not so much we're getting something for nothing, it's that we're reallocating the resources that we already have. For instance, the current healthcare system costs a massive amount. In fact, it costs about $1 billion more so than the Sanders plan would have done, just by virtue of the fact that there is currently an unnecessary middleman gatekeeping who does and does not get health care.
So when you look at the political structure of the company and of the country and the corporate structure of the country, do you see that there are issues that are far greater that need to be resolved to be able to accommodate this kind of change? I mean, it's a massive change. You know, healthcare is a massive part of the economy.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, we do make the choices in the short term that address more surface level things, but really it does come down to the fundamental structures that we live within. I know that there's an issue with representation, with the way that districts have been gerrymandered, with the way that we do elect people in a manner that doesn't aptly reflect everyone's votes. And so I think that there are certainly broad systematic changes that need to be pursued, but we
For example?
Well, for example, right now, Reno's congressional district, CD2, is lumped in with a massive section of northern Nevada. And basically, that district is constructed in a way that it is a safe district for Amadei. And so every election cycle, Mark Amadei shows up on the debate stage and then takes his seat back in Congress. And it means that my vote as a Democrat living in northern Nevada doesn't really matter in that district. And so those systematic changes that really address the issues of representation, of who has a say in the decisions that are being made, really do come into play.
All right, but on the other hand, CD1 is, and has been up until now, a safe district for Dina Titus. There is some concern amongst Democrats that with the remaking of the districts in southern Nevada, that perhaps that won't be quite as safe a district, but I think it's going to be interesting to see. I don't see that falling to the Republicans anytime soon. And CD3 has been a swing district, but they've moved more Democrats into that district. And the same story for CD4. So on balance, it's really favoring Democrats 3-1 in terms of Nevada's congressional seats.
You know, I personally believe that these broader issues cannot be pinned on one side or the other. Everyone contributes to them, and we all have a part in trying to make what good we can with the situation that we're handed. You are correct. However, that doesn't really ameliorate the fundamental issue at play. It just means that my side happens to be winning at the moment.
Okay, but how do you see this changing? I mean, you know, Democrats are certainly not going to vote to take away their majorities in the Assembly or the Senate. At this point, they also control the governor's office. What would inspire Democrats in power to change the structure that's being so successful for them right now?
Well, I think that fundamentally, in a realistic sense, things probably won't change until Nevada's population grows enough to warrant another congressional seat. However, that's really the issue, isn't it? Whoever has the power at the moment doesn't want to relinquish it, and so they're unwilling to make changes to the system that brought them that position of power.
Okay, but do you ever see that changing? I mean, you know, whoever willingly gives up power? I mean, in a lot of cases, who willingly gives up the power of an office? Term limits have forced people to step down, but when you talk to people who were forced out, invariably they will say, well, there was just one more project I wanted to do. There was one more thing I was working on that I wanted to get finished.
No, of course, and obviously that's the challenge of being a legislator. I think, though, that the way that we pursue solutions to this issue is by trying to craft policy reforms, small incremental changes that we can implement layer by layer so that we can make it a fairer, more detached process from the people who directly have power at the moment, so that you have more of an institution and it's not just whoever is at the helm at the current moment.
All right, so if you were in a more moderate situation politically in this country, potentially I could see that discussion occurring. But in the last election cycle and going forward, there's discussion about having the Federal Debate Commission being pushed out that has been around for a long time because, frankly, it just didn't seem to be partisan enough.
No, you have a point there, of course. But one thing that I know growing up in the state of Nevada is that on the state level at least, we make it about solutions. Our legislature, our governing bodies, usually are places, have historically been places that are aimed at finding solutions, to making lives better for Nevadans. And I think that the mark of a truly good legislator, a truly good political officer, is someone who does that, who doesn't focus on partisanship and truly tries to make the best difference for Nevadans at any given moment. I'm
not going to put you on the spot and have you name those people that currently exist in those roles, because it will be a pretty difficult thing to do.
Be a long list.
Well, it wouldn't be it would be a long list of people who wouldn't be willing to compromise. I mean, does it concern you that there doesn't seem to be much middle ground at this point in our history? That it's either all the way to one side or all the way to the other?
I think that when you look at elected leadership, that's often a sample of the most extreme segments of society. Among average people, among students on campus, there's a lot more middle ground than we would be led to believe in the mainstream narrative. And I think that at the end of the day, that is the beauty of trying to find solutions first and foremost in policy, because you can reach that middle ground without necessarily sacrificing your badge of honor as a Democrat or as a Republican.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think, when you have conversations with people who are outside of the political world, that don't have their laser focus on their phone 24 hours a day, following every poll and every movement, that there is a lot more middle ground. People still want the same things. They want to be able to make a decent living. They want to be able to raise their kids, hopefully buy a house. These are not extraordinary political goals. They're lifetime goals. But does it concern you that the media tends to accentuate the negative on a constant and regular basis? I would say to sell commercials. I mean, broadcasters, newspapers are all in the business of making money. And the way that they do that is by having outrageous headlines, whether the stories match up to those or not. Does that concern you?
It truly does concern me, because I think a lot of people rely on the media they consume as a locus of truth. It's how they get their facts straight. And I think that right now more than ever, media has a distinctive bias towards sensationalism and not properly vetting facts, so that what happens in essence is the truth fragments, and everyone has their own version of what's happening. That's a very dangerous world to live in, and it's a very dangerous way to do politics, because if we can't even agree on the facts, on what's right in front of us, then how can we find solutions to the issues that everyone faces?
It's funny. There's a book called Nevada Newspaper Days, which you can find, I'm sure, up at UNR in the Knowledge Center, that talks about an election back in Eureka, Nevada, back in the 1800s. And there were 5 newspapers that were functioning prior to the election. And the day after the election, they all went away because they were all just supporting a candidate. So this is really nothing new.
Oh, of course. Yellow Pages journalism is as old as American history. But at the end of the day, I do think it is worse now, since 24-hour news networks have really developed that profit incentive. Obviously, this is a little bit before my time, but there was even a time in this country when we had a fairness doctrine to make sure that not every person with a camera in a studio could spin the truth however they wanted to.
Well, yes, and for those that may not know this, but they can certainly look up the fairness doctrine. But it was basically that TV stations had to have opposing views. And so you had point counterpoint on issues, and it was mandatory that they ran them. Newspapers have done this over the years, but but for broadcasters, it was mandatory at the time. They got rid of that quite a long time ago, and yeah, I'm not a huge one in favor of mandating what people should cover, but in some ways, maybe that's not such a bad idea. Let's take a break. We'll come back much more with Nathan Noble. He's a student leader at UNR, and we'll be right back.
Can't do it. Stupid, like my mom.
We can't do anything at Mommy's because you won't pay child support.
Dad said you cheated, and he's not even sure he's my dad.
Mommy said you left both of us, so she isn't gonna let me see you. I look just like my father.
I'm divorce attorney Marilyn York, and I may represent men, but hate has no gender, only casualties. Please, stop sacrificing your children in your war against your ex.
The signs and symptoms of cataracts can start out small with subtle changes in your vision. So don't wait. Be proactive and take your vision into your own hands. If you're experiencing the onset of cataracts or just have questions, contact your eye care professional or call Eye Care Associates of Nevada today. Dr. Hiss has years of experience specializing in the surgical correction of eye disorders and has completed over 84,000 vision correcting procedures. At Eye Care Associates of Nevada, we'll change the way you look at the world.
Hey, Dad? What are you learning? This place is great. Huh? You gotta try this.
Wow, this stuff is great. People are gonna love it.
Yes. Yes, they will.
Serving Our Kids Foundation's mission is to serve homeless, at-risk, and food insecure children in grades K through 8 throughout Southern Nevada. During the pandemic, Serving Our Kids has seen a 42% increase in the number of children served, providing more than 4,500 meals to kids in over 100 schools weekly. Serving Our Kids is powered by community support and volunteers. To learn how you can help, visit servingourkids.org.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Nathan Noble. He is a student leader at UNR. He's also a senator and a Biden supporter because he certainly wasn't going to vote for Donald Trump. So you know, it's been interesting to watch the media after ferociously attacking Donald Trump with few exceptions. Now they are going after Joe Biden, perhaps not quite as ferociously, but certainly pointing out all the problems within this administration. Do you think the coverage at this point is fair?
You know, I think that fairness is in the eye of the beholder to a certain extent. I certainly don't think it aptly reflects the administration's policy agenda or the reality of what's happening on the ground. But I think that everyone has their own notion of how the president is doing, and then will choose their news accordingly. I think it's an issue that we live in a world where someone can essentially choose their own truth based on the coverage they want to see.
And that is interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they mentioned the news channel they watch, and they said the reason I watch that is that I agree with the news that they give me. And I thought, well, that's an interesting concept. Social media and how this plays, you know, you're from a different generation than most of the guests that are on this program, and that's one of the reasons I was happy to have you come on. What's the difference for you now between the information, I don't want to say news, but the information you get from social media versus what other sources you have for news?
Well, I think that social media in many ways, in the way that it functions as an information delivery system, is kind of the epitome of that fracturing of truth. Because whereas your friend was choosing their channel based on the news they wanted to see, the social media algorithm meticulously tailors every part of your homepage, of your timeline, of your dashboard to your specific likes, wants, and not needs, but what they think will keep you engaged, keep you scrolling and clicking. There's that profit incentive there, and there's absolutely no restraint on it right now. Basically, the social media algorithm currently It is designed to peddle rage, peddle strong feelings that will get you to engage further, to get you to tweet more, to get you to keep liking and scrolling. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. I think it's even more dangerous because it's so much more sophisticated.
When you say dangerous, how do you define danger?
Well, we live in a world where people act upon the information that they see in front of them. And if you're seeing a twisted, distorted version of the truth that is only grounded in your worst fears and paranoias about what's happening around you, then you're going to start acting in a way that reflects that. This is something that can destroy families. It makes it harder to communicate. It makes it harder to be decent to each other in public. And it certainly makes discourse and accomplishing policy a lot harder.
Do you think that there's really a difference in terms of what we know and understand and act upon that we used to do in private before social media, but people didn't necessarily talk about it, versus now when everybody is able to talk about everything? Because it strikes me that there have always been people of extremes, there have always been people in the middle, there have always been people of religion. You know, all the subjects that are, quote, taboo, you know, if you go to a dinner, except at Thanksgiving when Uncle George gets drunk and starts, you know, sounding off. But, you know, your thoughts there?
Well, you know, Sam, I will say in some regards I think you're asking the wrong guy, because I've grown up with social media, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I can't really remember very clearly a time before it, you know. I barely remember the Bush administration.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that there's something to that.
Well, but that gives you a very credible point, you know, to be able to say that. You know, it's kind of like, you know, somebody looking at, you know, a phone booth and going, you know, well, I've seen one of these in Doctor Who, but I'm not sure what they're for apart from that.
Right. And I think there's certainly that tendency, especially as we are moving into a new age of information. Really what it is everyone has become their own miniature public figure. Everyone's eyes are on everyone else, and everyone is sort of presenting themselves to be judged by the world. In a sense, I think that that is a way of exerting social control over people, because if we're all watching, then we are all not being authentic. Man is least himself when he speaks in his own person. But at the same time, I think that it does foster that authentic outrage that you have seen. Our world is more connected than ever. And it's not always a bad thing.
All right, let's take another break. We'll be back with Nathan Noble after this timeout.
Dimitri Prine here for Design Outdoor. Come visit Design Outdoor's store and backyard to see our wide selection of fire pits, barbecues, and pizza ovens, natural stone water features and fountains, and frost-proof pottery. Our store and backyard are located at 11600 South Virginia, just north of DeMonte Ranch Parkway. Visit designoutdoor.com or call us at 851-9499.
One of the most psychologically damaging things parents can do to children in divorce is disparage one another, which is why I can't believe I even have to make this commercial. Half of your kids' genetics come from this person you're spewing hate about. Your children have the right to love you both, but more than that, they deserve to love themselves.
Marilyn York might be a men's rights divorce attorney, but this is for every selfish parent. Shut up.
Hi, I'm Dave Newman. Remember me? I used to be the house detective, and now I'm a realtor, full-time at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates. And a lot of people ask me, how's the market? You know what? It's fantastic. If you're even kicking around the idea of buying or selling, give me a call. Let's talk about it. Call me at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates and just ask for the guy who used to be the house detective, Dave Newman.
Everyone is talking about opioids, but they're not the only drugs that can be harmful if taken in large quantities or not as prescribed. You also need to be aware of side effects from anxiety drugs, muscle relaxants, sleep aids, and stimulants. Mixing prescription drugs with other drugs or alcohol can be dangerous. If you take Ambien with a glass of wine, it may be enough to stop you from breathing. Prescribed drugs can be just as dangerous as illegal drugs. Take medications only as directed.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Nathan Noble. He's a student leader at UNR. Do you want to see social media restricted in any way by the government? Because obviously there are moves toward that. Does that concern you?
I believe that social media is essentially the new town square. I think that in many respects it is swiftly becoming a public utility. And I think that it is time to start having a conversation about regulating it as such.
Okay, but does that bring up the topic of censorship?
I think that at the end of the day, any conversation about censorship is really about amplification and about suppression. Right now, everyone has a voice and a platform. It's really the Wild West. And the reason why I want to publicize it is because that belongs to the public. Facebook, Google, those technology companies shouldn't control that microphone. They shouldn't control that public square. I think censorship is certainly an issue, and I think it's one that is exerted from the side of those technology companies predominantly.
And that's where we have to leave it for today. Do come back, and I'd like to bring in people with diverse opinions to continue this conversation with you. It will be fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Sam.
You're very welcome, and we'll be right back.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and Twitter. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Before the masks, before the distancing, before the world changed, UMC was ready. Our response to COVID-19 began before the crisis did, with our own team of infectious disease experts who've spent their careers planning for this moment. With a pandemic response plan, we'd practiced again and again, and by blazing new trails in large-scale testing, including every patient we admit. Always ready. UMC.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Events Center in Las Vegas. Host meetings and events on 2 floors. Stay in luxurious rooms and suites. Unlimited branding opportunities. Regional Italian cuisine by Chef Mark Segrisi. Flexible event spaces. Full buyout options. Visit ahernhotel.com today.
I'm Jeff Gehrman, an investigative reporter with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I'm your guide for Season 2 of Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas.
You're in with every gangster and hoodlum in the United States. I don't go for that, Mr. Kennedy. I don't go for that kind of action.
I was on television accused of fronting for the mob.
Subscribe to Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas, Season 2, today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and YouTube. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
You can now watch Nevada Newsmakers on YouTube. Subscribe to our Nevada Newsmakers channel. We'll see you on the next broadcast.